You are listening to Arcane Carolinas, an exploration of the Carolinas' folklore, legends, myths, and modern weird. Each episode, we examine the historical context of our topic and aim to preserve some of the stories that help make this part of the world such a fascinating place.
Hey, this is Michael with Arcane Carolinas, and welcome to the January episode of Arcane Carolinas Case Files. As always, I just want to note ahead of time, these are not our stories. We don't make any claim to them. We've invited some folks from around the Carolinas to come on and tell us their stories and about their experiences. These are folks who are paranormal investigators in various parts of our two states, and we just really love hearing their experiences and getting them to tell us about the adventures that they've been on and kind of what got them started in this. If any of them interest you as somebody that you might want to talk to about something that you would like to see investigated, then we'll try to put whatever contact information we have for them in the show notes, and you can reach out to them directly. In the meantime, thanks for listening. Enjoy the show.
For today's Arcane Carolinas Case Files, we are joined by Gabe from Wayward America.
Hey, everybody.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your channel, your interests, tell me about your hopes and dreams.
All right, yeah, we're gonna get into the deep stuff. I'm Gabe. I run Wayward America. It's a YouTube channel with a couple of my friends. We go around all sorts of states, actually. We've been South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, out to California for a little bit. We just investigate urban legends, ghost hunting, monster hunting, treasure hunting. That's probably my favorite one.
Treasure hunting.
That one's been fun. Yeah. And the first thing we ever did was treasure hunt out on Folly Beach, South Carolina. But we're working on one right now that's pretty interesting. But yeah, so that's pretty much what we do.
I noticed on your YouTube channel that you actually went into the tunnels in Colombia that we talked about in one of our episodes.
Yeah, that's actually, I was going to bring that up because I saw that you guys had an episode about that. Yeah, we found like this map that someone had drawn of all the entrances they found. And we went to each of the entrances to see which ones seemed like viable entrances to the actual tunnel system. So we went to a few of them. Most of them were sewers. I gotta say, most of what we found were sewers. So I wouldn't necessarily call it successful, but it was fun.
Very cool.
You're not eager to just climb headfirst into the first available sewer that you can find in Colombia?
Yeah, well, I live in the sewers, so going there for fun just doesn't sound like a good time to me.
Kind of a busman's holiday, you know.
Are you the third eye man?
Yeah, basically. That's me. I just like to munch on raw chicken and stay away from people. My favorite activities.
2020 story.
Yeah, good time for that, huh?
Awesome. You mentioned that you got a map that somebody had made. Do you enjoy it? Do you welcome people sending you information about stuff?
Yes. Yeah. So I always want to try to encourage people to, because like there's only so much stuff you can find online that people talk about, but people are always having like personal experiences of things that they just don't talk about. Like, you know, if you ask any one person, is this place or this place haunted, you know, people will know, but you might not necessarily find it anywhere else. So I like when people send us information about like possible monster hunts, ghost hunts, stuff like that, you know, rumors they've heard. That would be fantastic. Yeah.
And you're pretty well traveled, you were saying. Where would you like to receive stuff from? Like, are you focused geographically on a certain area?
Well, right now we're limited mostly just by the time that we have. But I like to try to include the entire, we're locked geographically into the entire US. So ideally we could do anything from anywhere. Okay. Right now it's mostly just the Southeast, but we filmed some stuff in New Mexico, like I said, California, a couple other states. We're trying to further our reach a little bit more now, but it's mostly just like drive times can get into like 4 hours just into, you know, next state over. So yeah, it's mostly just finding time, but I have like a Google Maps with pins on it for every single urban legend I've heard of. And I've got like hundreds and hundreds of pins on it all over the US.
Wow.
So eventually we'll get around to them.
That's awesome. How should people get in touch with you?
Probably the most engaging way to do it is to go to the YouTube channel and put something in the comments, because we try to respond to comments and stuff like that. We also have an Instagram account. I have admittedly been neglecting the Instagram account. So if we get a message about something, I'll respond to it, but we haven't posted anything. We've been kind of on a break for everything except for YouTube recently, just because, everyone's on a break right now, right?
Right.
It's hard to get anything done these days. But probably the YouTube comments section. A terrible place to go, but if you're brave enough to go there, you can post a comment.
The YouTube comment section is the sewer. So we'll make sure to include those links in the show notes.
Yeah. For
people. The treasure hunting thing. So you have like a metal detector and stuff?
So my metal detector broke.
Okay.
I'm gonna have to get a new one eventually. But yeah, so the treasure hunting and like artifact hunting is probably my favorite thing that we do on the show. And the thing that we're working on right now is, I'm sure you guys have heard of it. Have you ever heard of The Secret, the treasure hunt?
Yep.
Yeah. There's supposed to be one in Charleston. We're putting out a couple of series of videos trying to tell a story with it, but right now we're working on trying to find the Charleston box.
Okay.
And we have a couple of ideas that are different than what you might find online, which is promising. But like the treasure hunting with the aspect of figuring out where something is probably my favorite part of that whole thing.
I'm going to ask you to explain it, partly because it's possible that our listeners have not heard of this, and partly because I thought you meant like the self-help book. And so I was like, yeah, okay. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Oh, okay. I'm more than happy to explain it. In 1983, a guy named Byron Price wrote a book. And this book has cryptic paintings and riddles. It's got 12 paintings and 12 riddles. And when you pair a painting with a riddle, it leads you to a treasure box hidden in some major city. So one of them was found in Chicago. There's one that's supposed to be in St. Augustine. There's one that's supposed to be in Charleston. Since 1983, only 3 boxes have been found. One was found in the 80s, one was found in 2004, and one was found in 2019, I think, actually. There's one in North Carolina, I think Roanoke or something. And there's one that's supposed to be in Charleston. And nobody's found them yet, even though these puzzles are supposed to be relatively simple to solve. Each cask is unique. The really compelling thing about it is each cask that the treasure is hidden in is unique. So when you find it, you can get a key that you exchange for a gemstone. You exchange it with Byron Price. I think his wife is running it now because he's passed. But you exchange it for a gemstone. But the real treasure is the cask, because they're all unique. Their value is incalculable because they're all unique and they've never been owned by anyone. So the value of that cask, when you find it, is whatever someone is willing to offer you for it.
Yeah.
Which, given how popular this treasure hunt has become over the past few years, at least, it's a really compelling thing to look for.
I first heard about this back in like 2014, 2015, somewhere in there. There was like maybe Outdoor Magazine or something. Some magazine ran a story on it. Yeah. And I was like, this is amazing. And that's how I found out about it.
My mind is
pretty crazy
by this. I had no idea that this is a thing that existed. That is phenomenal.
It is. People spend years of their lives trying to look for these things, because once you start, it becomes an obsession. Once you start looking for it, you don't want to stop, because you always feel like you're close, even though for a lot of people you're not close, but you just catch that bug. And I get really deep into research. I get obsessive over finding things. So I wanted to just kind of have something to obsess over. So I was like, let me finally pull the trigger on this one and start looking for the the secret box. So we'll see how that turns out. We haven't actually gone out and looked for it yet. but we're getting up places to go. But it's a really crazy thing because it's real,
Right.
And people have found it. So it's out there.
I love it. I wish you nothing but the best. I hope you find it and that you can come on and talk about it.
For real.
Yeah, if I find it, I'll definitely come on and talk about it.
I can never read this book because I will become dangerously obsessed. I will become the weird person who lives in a motorhome and just like trespasses on other people's property every day trying to find this.
Yeah.
People will see your motorhome coming and be like, oh, here he comes again. We thought he already checked his spot out, but he's got a new clue.
I'll just emerge with a beard 7 feet long screaming about Reddit.
That's an awesome story to share. We talked about the tunnels. I don't want to press you too hard. Are there any other like favorite nuggets of adventure that you want to share?
Oh yeah. I mean, no, you're not pressing for it at all. I am constantly trying to contain myself from releasing my favorite,
Cool.
my favorite nuggets of information. One of the things that we did on the show that I have to force myself, there's a lot of things I have to force myself not to look too deep into because I know that I will get I'll just fall down the rabbit hole. So we did this big thing about UFOs. And I'll tell you what, the UFO rabbit hole is deep and I don't think there's a bottom to it. I don't think it ends.
Yeah, you can chase that for the rest of your life.
Yep.
Yeah, you really can. That one's crazy. Most of that was most of that happened out in California. We went to New Mexico. I visited Area 51 at one point. That was cool. South Carolina, I think probably one of the most interesting things is the tunnels. There's a lot of really neat stuff that people just don't know about in South Carolina and in North Carolina and the whole Southeast, because for some reason, at least in my area, people have a mindset that there's nothing here. You just have to get out of here in order to have fun, go on an adventure and stuff. And that's just not true. You just have to know what's around,
Yeah, I always get what is the town in Stranger Things? Hawkins, Indiana.
Yeah.
And I know the whole point of the design of that town is that it's like any town USA. But I feel like if you just have a spark of imagination, you can go out and you can find weird stuff in your town. Not necessarily a government research center with a portal to another dimension, like in Stranger Things.
Maybe.
But maybe.
If you've got enough imagination.
Right. But you can find cool stuff, cool old stuff, cool new stuff. There's a story that we're going to do about a facility nearby that is operational now and is extremely mysterious and falls into that category of maybe it's a secret government lab creating a portal to another dimension. Is it probably? No, but maybe.
Could be.
Could be.
Also, it's one of those topics that has been on the fringe of conversation about this area by people who've lived in this area for decades, and it has just persisted as a mystery, which I really love. UFOs in South Carolina. When this comes out, we will have just published an episode before it about UFOs in South Carolina because the county that contains Myrtle Beach has 3 of the top towns in North America for UFO sightings.
Yeah. I feel like I had heard that at some point, but I completely forgot about that. I feel like I might have heard it at some point, but that's really interesting. Because, South Carolina, Myrtle Beach especially, not the type of place you think about when you think of UFOs.
No, you think miniature golf and cheap drinks.
Yeah. I was thinking colorful drinks in palm tree shaped glasses. Memories. Anyway, we really appreciate you coming on. We just wanted to give you a platform to promote your channel and your adventures and share some stories. And we think that our listeners would really enjoy your channel.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you guys so much for having me on. It was great talking to you guys about all this.
Oh, thank you for being here.
Welcome to this one actually is a very special episode. Normally I say that and we kind of tease me about, I say every episode's a very special episode. This one is a different Arcane Carolinas case files because Michael is not with us at the moment. He is dealing with the joys of plumbing disasters. So I'm joined today by PACT Paranormal. Would you all like to introduce yourselves?
Yes, I'm Stephanie.
And I'm her mother, Martha Carpenter.
And we founded PACT Paranormal back in 2012.
Yep.
And before we were kind of on or live, you explained a little bit about where the name comes from.
Yes. The P comes from the word paranormal and the ACT comes from activity. And we decided on that just as a cute little pun. And then we're also making a pact to find answers in the paranormal world.
Yeah, I like it. You know, caught my eye as I was looking on the internet because I reached out to you guys via email and was like, hey, you want to come talk about cool stuff? And you guys said, sure, which is awesome. And the name's great.
We're not like your typical investigators, though, because most of the time the paranormal world finds us first.
Yeah, we get by the paranormal all the time.
It usually finds us. So.
Do you want people to send you leads or clues or anything?
Oh, of course, anytime.
Okay. What's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
You can email us directly at pact.paranormal@yahoo.com.
And you have a website too.
Yes, it's www.pactparanormalinvestigations.yolasite.com. And that has information on everything we do.
Including your book.
Yes. And it can be found in any stores or on Amazon, Kindle, Audible. And it's called What Doesn't Kill You by Stephanie Carpenter and Martha Carpenter.
What's it about?
It's actually about our most intense paranormal case, which is a really personal and dark story. We actually had our most intense case in the home we were living in at the time, which is just right up the road from where we're at now. The story revolves around my dad, and we did lose him to all of this. So it's a really dark and tragic story, but we shared it in hopes of using our dark times to be a light in others people's lives. But
sure.
We actually experienced my father being manipulated by evil forces.
God. Yeah, that sounds like an intense read. I saw the description, on the website that it was a deeply personal story. And I don't think we should go into all of that here. People should buy the book if they want to hear parts of that story. But thank you for being willing to share all that.
Oh, of course.
Would you like to share maybe a shorter or lighter story from one of your investigations?
My favorite paranormal experiences involves my dad too. It was after my dad passed away, but my vehicle, the tire had gone flat and I had to go to work. So I was in a crunch. So we were looking everywhere. We're like, where is a tire tool just to change this tire so I can get to work on time? Looked all around the house, everywhere. There was nothing. Okay. So I started to panic, thought I was going to miss work. And sure enough, my dad's tire tool just shows up right there by the door. So I honestly believe that he put that there for me.
Thanks, Dad. That's awesome.
He was still helping me even though he's on the other side. So
sure. Well, that's a fun one.
Yeah.
How do you mentioned, I think before we were live, you might've mentioned this as we were already recording, that the paranormal finds you more often than not.
Yeah, it does.
All the time, actually.
Yes. See, we got started in this whole paranormal investigation spree whenever I was just taking a walk one day, and I was with two other people, and we just couldn't sleep that night, and it was hot, and we just decided to take a late night walk. And you could walk this circle around the property, and it was about 1.5 miles, but you would come right back to your starting point. So we were going to walk this circle that night, and the moon was so bright, you could see everything. You didn't need flashlights or anything of that nature. You could just see everything like it was daylight, pretty much. So we're walking. Nobody was talking about anything in particular, just small talk. And for some reason, the guys that I were with, they were like, why don't we go over to this barn? And I got this really creepy feeling. I was like, I don't know. I said, maybe we should go back and get a flashlight first. And they're like, no, just come on. And right when they said that, one of them looked straight across. We're like on the road where the double yellow lines are. And he said, what is that? And I said, oh yeah, that's really funny. Cause I thought they were making fun of me because I was worried about going into this barn for whatever reason. And he's like, no, what is that? And I looked and I saw this really tall shadow, really slender. He was about 8 feet tall, like the shadow was. And I was trying to put logic to it, like how I'd missed this walking down and what could be making the shadow. And I couldn't figure it out. And that's when this shadow figure walked distinctively on 2 legs from the double yellow line to the white line. He turned towards us, and the guys had already taken off running. So I was just standing there with a more delayed reaction. And I was like, okay, well, I guess I should follow him. So I eventually took off running. This was before my bravery kicked in. But I was running with him, and I looked back over my shoulder a couple times, and this thing was chasing me on all 4s, but not like any animal. And all I remember is it had no eyes, no features. It was just this dark shadow, and it's chasing me on all 4s. And the last time I looked over my shoulder, it just vanished. It's not like it went off into the woods or went the other way. It literally just disappeared.
Oh God.
So I went home and I called dear mom here, and you know what she says? Mm-hmm. She says, nothing chases my daughter. We're going back.
Of course. That was the start of everything. Yes.
Man. Yeah, no thank you. I would not go back. So good on you. I would not do that. I enjoy camping and the outdoors, and I've had nothing like that. No experiences like that. I've mentioned it in one of our episodes. Something came through our camp one night and scared the bejesus out of me, where I just refused to get out of my tent to even investigate it. It was probably an animal, nothing like that. So I can't imagine seeing something in the middle of the night, sort of out, in the woods or by the road. Like, whew, no, thank you. I'm good.
The experience was very intriguing, and it led us to where we are. I mean, we had paranormal teams come in to check this out with us, and they would get so scared that they would chicken out, and then they would never talk to us again.
They actually jumped in our lap.
Yeah, the man from the Army jumped into our laps, and he literally, quote unquote, said, "You guys are the ballsiest women I've ever met."
Yes, and we are.
But now we live up to that name.
Oh, yeah.
No, that's great. That's awesome. So the dynamic of our show, Michael's not here today, but the dynamic of our show is he's generally the one that would run towards it. We're not paranormal investigators. We just enjoy the stories and the folklore that you can sometimes tie to occurrences. He would probably be super into investigating that, whereas I would be like, no, I'm good.
No, you have to come too. You have to.
Yeah, see, you need to brave up with us, and we'll make you so brave you will not believe how brave you will be. Yeah.
So you guys are doing something tonight. You mentioned in an email. Is that something you can talk about, or is that sort of like a private investigation that you're helping someone with?
Well, it was actually another radio show.
Oh, okay, cool, awesome.
But it got canceled. It's postponed to January 11th. It's with X on Radio with Rob McConnell.
Okay, cool.
But he was in an accident, so.
Oh, geez, it is a bad day. I am really glad that I did not cancel on you then. Because we got I was talking to Michael and I was like, oh man, it's really close to the time. I don't think we can cancel on him. And he was like, no, we can't. And I was like, oh man.
One day, I know.
So yeah, no, well, that works out. That makes me feel really, really good about sticking with this. And I'm sure that Michael would love to do a follow-up with y'all later down the road as well.
Yeah, anytime.
I appreciate your time and your willingness to talk to a stranger from the internet that sent you an email. It's kind of weird sometimes reaching out to folks, even if you are like-minded, and it's always a roll of the dice. And I really appreciate you taking the time to come on. So our guest today on this case file is Tony from Spirit of the Appalachians Paranormal Research Society. Tony, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I grew up at the Penland School of Crafts. My family had a lot to do with Miss Lucy Morgan, who was the founder of Penland. My great-grandmother was the first weaver at Penland, and then her daughter became the registrar, and my grandfather worked with Miss Lucy. So it was a very unique life. I got to grow up with some of the greatest artists and craftsmen in the world. As you might realize, in this nature of the woods, this is in Mitchell County, North Carolina, and which is not actually not far from Mount Mitchell, which we're talking high country here. And in fact, not far from where the Brown Mountain Lights actually happen. And I've been to Weissman's View many times. But life up here was really amazing. It was very hard. I was born in 1958, so it was very hard to get in and out of these hills. A trip to Asheville took 2 hours. At any rate, my grandmother used to tell me tall tales and ghost stories, and she was a very spiritual woman in a lot of respects. She told my mother, I guess before I was born, and she said, now you're going to hear things in this house. You might even see things in this house, but there's nothing in this house that will bother you. And I grew up in that house most of my life, certainly in and out. My dad, who's still alive, and his wife run the Chink and Pin Inn at Penland out of the family home. So it was just very unique, and there were lots of stories, and people would sit around, and the fire would be going in the fireplace, and somebody would start telling ghost stories. Or weird things happen in up these hollers kind of stories. One of the stories that I heard growing up, actually slept in the bed. I was probably 12 before I realized that I was sleeping in the actual bed where this happened. There was a woman by the name of Margaret Randolph Waltz who came to study ceramics at Penland. And my understanding was she was very good at making angels, probably slip cast out of porcelain, that kind of thing. And she developed, she was actually quite young. She developed pneumonia after getting influenza. And she was staying with my grandmother, and the brand new house they built wasn't more than a couple of years old. And my grandmother came down to wake her up, and the doctor, Dr. Peterson, who was out of Spruce Pine, he was kind of the circuit doctor. He made house calls, and he was kind of like a circuit preacher. And he had been treating her. Grandma comes down to wake her up. Well, she's not waking up anymore. And she's 34 years old, 10 months and 10 days. I'm looking at the death certificate right now. I have it. And so Miss Lucy, and that's what's written on the death certificate, Miss Lucy reported the death, and Dr. Peterson came and pronounced her dead. Now, this is where the story, the facts, I mean, at this point, this is where the facts get a little fuzzy. My understanding is they took her body downstairs to the basement below to a large bedroom downstairs. And they notified her mother, who lived in Hot Springs. And I have no idea if her mom made it. I was kind of shocked to know that they did not return her body to Hot Springs. They buried her at Penland. But where the story gets interesting is my understanding was she was buried within 24 hours. The basement probably was a good idea because it's usually cool down there. And so the next day, my grandmother and Miss Lucy, I know for a fact, after the funeral, were sitting in the living room of the house. And there was a third person there. We think it could have been my great aunt Flossie, or maybe Margaret's mother, if she could have gotten there that fast from Hot Springs. At that time, it was a challenge getting to Penland. I've got to put my glasses on, guys. Sorry. March 29th, 1939, I think is the date I'm seeing here. Of course, it's a doctor's handwriting, so.
That never helps.
Never. So, at any rate, they're all sitting around, all three of these women. Lucy had a room in the house, so she was living with my grandparents at the time. And it's in the afternoon after the funeral. They're all sitting around having their toddy. My grandmother drank bourbon. Miss Lucy drank Mogan David wine. I'm not kidding. Okay, for real. And so they were all sitting around and grieving and talking about Margaret. And my grandmother and Miss Lucy swore to this. I knew Lucy, and she was a sweet little lady. But she swore that Margaret came through the glass windows of the porch and came and said, I know you're hurting. I know this is rough, but I'm okay. Please tell my children I'm all right. So at that point, if that had been me, I would have gone and got the bottle of bourbon and I really would have finished it. but yeah, you heard things in that house when I was a kid. You heard footsteps. I've been alone in that house and heard somebody directly above my head on the third floor walking across the floor and then stop at the head of the stairs. That was the kind of thing that, as a child, piqued my interest in the unusual. And, of course, it didn't help that my grandmother, who was a fan of the Twilight Zone, when she would babysit me and I would be like 7 years old, I would insist on watching the Twilight Zone with her, or fake going to sleep, because she thought everybody thought I should be asleep by 10 o'clock at night.
Right.
So,
Naturally.
I would lay on the couch and squint and look at the TV and watch the Twilight Zone.
Grandmas are good for that.
Oh,
Yeah.
they're great. Hey, they are. They're the ones that twist you. I'm convinced of it. So there were a lot more stories around Penland, strange things that happened. The Penland got started because of the Appalachian School, which was a parochial school started by the Episcopal Church. And it was kind of a place where kids could get an education. I would have gone there if they hadn't closed that the year before I was to start school. But my whole family was educated there, went to church in the chapel there at the school. And the priest that ran the school actually told stories of a ghost horseman that would ride through the building, because the old road from Penland Station at the foot of the mountain ran right through that building.
That's awesome. I like that.
Yeah.
It was, well, it's kind of a good story, because the guy allegedly saw a murder that happened about 2 curves away from the house where I grew up. And the guy that did the murdering saw the guy that witnessed the murder and shot him and chased him all the way to Penland Station, where he dropped dead. And then they built the building right smack over top of the road. My father suspects that Father Lambert probably told the story just to keep the boys excited and to put the fear of God in them, let's say. So that was life. That was life at Penland, and we had great adventures growing up. It was, you could go into some of the empty buildings when Penland wasn't operating, and it was very creepy. It was a lot of fun.
Did you so the group that we're talking about today, your group and how we found you started that in 2009, right?
Right.
Okay, cool. And I'm just looking at the YouTube channel right now, and you've got videos going back for years, which is awesome. So there's a lot of content there if people want to check that out and learn more about you. We're going to include a link to that in the show notes. So if you're listening to this and you want to see some of Tony's videos, I don't think there's any spectral horses, which is awesome. and I want to see the guy riding the horse.
I do too. I always did.
But they are good videos. And would you like people to bring you reports of things that might need investigating?
Oh, absolutely, of course. I mean, anything we can learn. As you and I discussed in prep, we've kind of the group in and of itself, we kind of had to lay low after my mother died. I wound up having to run her business, and there's just not been time. But I'm about ready to crank back up again. I think it would be, and of course, nobody's doing any investigating this year, or they're going to be investigating you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. This is a great year for not investigating.
Yeah.
Well, I'm waiting to see what happens on the paranormal end when you start to investigate places where people unfortunately died of COVID. I mean,
Yeah.
give me a break. As I think you guys know, I know Charlie knows, I was an EMT and worked at Baptist Hospital for a while in the trauma center. With that, I was young, wanted the excitement. I wanted the excitement of a level 1 trauma center, and I got it. I've seen the impossible. And thought I would never work in a hospital again after I left there, and wound up at Duke University Medical Center for like 10 years. So it's a remarkable, actually almost 13 years. I started on a psych unit at Duke and wound up in prosthetics and orthotics. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. And speaking of creepy, go to Duke South. Walk through that Duke South in the middle of the night. It's closed. Yeah.
I've heard people describe Duke campus as Hogwarts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
In a big way.
Exactly. When we started the group, my brother came to me. He had been watching Ghost Hunters.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, these guys are pretty good. They're pretty good. He said, I think we could do this. And I said, all right, now, David, if this is what we're going to do, you got to understand, I have worked in 2 major research universities. So we're going to go in, we're all in here.
Right.
And it's going to be objective. I am not going to go and put my hands up in the air and simply say, oh, because I want something to be true, it is. Right. So we started doing this and sort of self-taught ourselves, and I kind of held on to the scientific model as much as I can. Good luck, because that's not going to happen, not in this profession or this world. As it turned out, we went and investigated, and it's on our YouTube site. One of our first investigations, probably our first serious one. We'd sort of done a couple of pilot investigations, and they were crap. They really weren't very, very good. But we were learning, and we were in that process of the learning curve. And we wound up at this inn in Burnsville. A little reluctant to actually name it.
Sure.
But it is on the YouTube site if people are interested in seeing.
Is this the one titled Ghost ? Something Strikes Our Camera?
Yep, that's it.
Oh, perfect.
We were there. It was me, my brother, and my girlfriend. And the man who owned the inn at that time was from Great Britain. And he had heard we were cranking up and, come investigate. The accounts that we heard as we researched the history, this is a very old inn. I mean, it's been around since like 18 whatever, either just prior or just after the Civil War. In fact, part of it was built as a cabin, which has been actually covered up as the inn developed and grew. And at any rate, we got there, and they had two guests in the inn that night. One was actually a lawyer from Chapel Hill, and he was staying there for the night. I can't remember why. And then there was another guest, and they were separated by several rooms. And this inn is well known historically in the area. Thomas Wolfe stayed at this inn. His mother stayed at this inn. And so we get set up, and these people come up to us, and we were trying to be all quiet and undercover because these were guests, and we were trying to be covert. And they say, "Oh, are you the ghost hunters?" And I looked at the manager of the inn, and I said, "Well, so much for, subterfuge here. This isn't working." So I looked, I laughed, and I said, "Well, I guess the secret's out." Yeah. And so we got started, and my brother had to leave because he had to go to work. So that left me and my girlfriend there on the third floor. That hallway runs north and south. And there had been accounts, first of all, that a woman was frequently seen at the inn. There were also people who would tell the owners that there was the ghost of a child. And other children, if they came to stay at the inn with their parents, would start talking to nothing. And their parents would say,
hell no.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And the parents would say, yeah, who the hell are you talking to? And the kids would say, well, that little boy right there, don't you see him?
No, thank you.
There were accounts that it sounded like a child playing with marbles in the middle of the floor. Now, you cannot walk through this inn quietly. Every board creaks. Everything makes a sound. So that's annoying from an investigative point of view. But we didn't have much equipment, so we set one camera up, which was an old tape camera, in the corner of the room where these women had reported that there was a woman that they had seen. They left at midnight because they saw this woman in the corner. And so we set the camera up pointing from one corner to the other, which if you look at the footage, my girlfriend is actually on the other side of the bed. And so prior to the event, we start getting hits on our EMF meters. And I would ask whatever was there to come close, and the meters would react and go up, and I'd say, okay, thank you very much. Back off now. Let us know that, you're here by now, backing away, and let's try and get a little bit of evidence here, at least on the meter. Well, that went on for, as you can see, probably longer than anyone's interested watching footage of a meter. But about 20 or 30 minutes later, I thought I heard a squeaky little voice out in the hallway.
No, thank you. I'm good. This is why we're not paranormal investigators, because I would have zero interest in being a part of that at all.
Well, it's kind of like a fireman running into the building that's on fire and not out. So I go outside, and as you could tell by the footage, I'm kind of listening, and I'm kind of thinking, okay, where are you, kid? And we didn't have marbles to play with. We brought a ball and put it in the middle of a hallway in the floor, hoping it would move, and we would catch it. So I didn't hear the voice while I was out in the hallway. I go back into the bedroom. My girlfriend asked me, why'd you go out there? I said, I thought I heard a squeaky voice. I go back out into the hallway, and I'm standing at the doorway of the room, and I invited the kid to give the ball a big kick. I said, well, no, you're here if you kick that ball. Nothing happened, and I was like, okay, this is the way it goes. And I said, okay, if you're the older woman that's here, if you're the older woman that people have seen here, give that ball a big kick. We'll know it's you. And a few seconds pass, as you can tell on the footage, and all of a sudden, bam! I'm standing out in the hallway. My girlfriend's on the other side of the bed. I walked into the room, and the electrical cord, we had it so that we didn't have to run off batteries. We had the camera plugged into the wall, and the electrical cord was swinging back and forth on that tripod. And my girlfriend said, "Did you hear that?" And I said, "Yeah, I did." Obviously, this is why I walked back into the room. Of course, we're checking the meters immediately, all that kind of thing. But
it's definitely a kid, because kids will always go for the electronics over the simple toy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The other thing is I'm going to be just as mischievous as I possibly can be. I'm going to be as disruptive as humanly possible. Well, it was. So I'm thinking, okay, and I think this is a good time to say that as far as objectivity goes and credibility goes, in this business, because the scientific model does not work, your credibility is only as good as your word. And if you're going to fake stuff, if you're going to make stuff up, you're worthless. I mean, there's just nothing that makes me angrier faster than to discover that people have faked evidence or especially when someone wants to keep an open mind and be objective and do this right.
Michael and I talk a lot about applying critical thinking to these types of stories. We cover in a episode titled "The Cora Tree" about a coastal legend, where a little bit of critical thinking sort of takes the wind right out of it.
Yeah,
right, right. And it's important to get things right, and it's good to preserve the stories. We never tell people that their experiences are crap. You don't do that, because people have to trust that you're going to treat them fairly and give them a hearing. And yes, you keep your mind open, and occasionally you board the crazy train, but that's rare, at least so far in my experience. Mm-hmm. But when I edit footage and when I go through everything, I think it's important, and Charlie and I were talking about this earlier, to put what happened before the alleged paranormal event. What was going on before that? And then what's going on after that? Which means that's why my videos are so long.
No, I think that's a great approach. I really... Anyone that's listened to this show knows that we keep an open mind, but we do like to take that sort of get as many pieces of the puzzle as we can before expressing an opinion. And we certainly welcome stories, but have your attitude, as well, of like, well, what was going on beforehand? Well, what was going on after? I love that approach. And I'm so glad that we were able to talk a little bit before we started recording about that. And I'm glad that you brought it up now.
Well, it's critical, I think. It really is.
If I were going to be a paranormal investigator, I think that my biggest problem would be that A, I would want it too badly. But B, because I'm sitting here thinking, oh, now I need to know where this inn is, and I need to take a bag of marbles when I stay there. Whereas Charlie's reaction is like, no. I would be the one that Charlie eventually had to report missing, So, but I think that for me, it would be a real challenge to walk the line between, am I documenting what I'm experiencing, or am I experiencing what I'm experiencing?
Right.
And I think that I would end up shifting my attention, the focus of my attention, to the more ephemeral aspects of like, it feels spooky. And I would sort of forget the scientific aspect of it. And so I think that would just, I would end up being somebody who had a lot of stories and no proof.
So, well, it is funny. You tend to slide into that a little bit. And you have to be careful. Interestingly enough, and I need to re-edit that video and add this, A little bit later, about 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, we'd been banging pretty hard. And there's a point at which you just, in an investigation, I think, where you just say, okay, time to live life. Whatever's here is here. We pushed pretty hard. It might even be angry at this point that we've been harassing it for hours. So maybe the thing to do is just, as my girlfriend and I did, we laid down on the bed. We went, we slept a little while. I got up and went out in the hallway, and I started an EVP session. And I never heard this while I was there. But after it was over with, after I started reviewing the evidence, I've got the headphones on, I hear something. And I called my girlfriend into the office, and I said, listen to this. I've listened to this 3 times. You tell me what you hear. And she came in and she listened, and she goes, yeah, you got something. I said, what's it say? She said, it's saying, that's enough, Tony. So this EVP was calling me by name. My girlfriend corroborated it without me prompting her. And she heard the same thing I did. And I was like, okay, could I sit here in all honesty and say I could prove that particular inn is haunted? No, because you can't prove this stuff. Do I believe that something funky and weird might be going on? Oh, yeah. There's also another piece of footage there. And actually, this is a local theater, same town, in Burnsville. And the director asked us to investigate this particular theater. And theaters are notoriously, and I have a show business background as well. I went to the North Carolina School of the Arts in high school. I was actually a ballet dancer. I know I don't look like it now. But at any rate, they're notoriously haunted, or people say so. And the technical director for the theater, he and I had quite a conversation, and he had, let's just say, a close encounter of a really personal kind with something that wasn't there. And I was like, holy cow, all right, this is going to be fun. So we investigated that theater twice. Once, the second time, actually, during a play. And the play was about that very theater being haunted. Yeah. So, but at any rate, the first time we were there, as you can see in the footage, we were on the stage, and I was sitting in a chair. One of my investigators was standing next to me. My daughter was in the floor. And I asked, we were trying to do the flashlight trick, which is dicey. It's not good evidence, but
describe the flashlight trick.
Okay, you take a mag light, and the mag light turns, and it turns on when you twist it, and it turns off when you twist it counterclockwise. Well, if you take that flashlight and you set it just so that right before it will turn on, and you ask during a call and response session, you ask something to turn the flashlight on and off, it's, for lack of a better term, the flashlight acts as a Ouija board saying yes and no. Fundamentally.
Right. Gotcha.
And I don't like it. It's not my favorite method. But sometimes we'll use it just to see if we can't prompt or poke a little energy into the investigation. And I had the flashlight on the floor pointing at the camera. We were in infrared mode, as I recall, that night. And I asked whatever was there if it would turn the flashlight on. The flashlight turned on, paused about a second and a half, 2 seconds, and then rolled across the floor. And I went, okay.
Cool.
Well, yeah, that was cool. And it was. I was like, okay. And then later, my brother, who I sent downstairs where they store a lot of the props and a lot of those sets and scenery and stuff, I asked him to go down there and take a group of investigators with him. And as if you look at that footage, you'll see he reacts in a very, very energetic way at something he said went through his leg. We caught it on camera, but we didn't catch whatever was down on the floor going through his leg. The camera wasn't on the floor. So when we investigated the second time during the play, he was down there. And we try not to send people ever alone, but with my brother, I'll send my brother alone sometimes. I'll sit there and I'll go, hey, David, go. You're all right. You're on camera. I can see you right here, Tech. And he's down there, and he gets back in touch with me and says, Tony, I have no idea if this is what went through his leg, but he said, Tony, I said, yeah, the play is going on. And he says, I'm down here in this room with a possum. And I was like, what? And he says, there's a possum down here. And I said, for God's sake, close the door. We don't need this theater full of people to suddenly have a possum run rampant. So he's like, I don't want to close the door down here. I'm down here by myself. I said, David, if you can't run through that plywood door, something's wrong with you. So, you know, it gets fun and exciting at times.
How would people get in touch with you if they wanted to get in touch with you?
People can certainly email me at afordgh for ghost hunter @gmail.com.
Okay.
That's all lowercase. I will tell you, you know, you can always go to our YouTube site, but that's the best way to get a hold of us. We had a website at one point, but that kind of disintegrated because the guy who set it up for us sort of vanished.
Yeah. That's the nature of the internet sometimes. So then email is like by far the best way to get in touch with you?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Absolutely.
Great. And we'll include a link to your YouTube channel in the show notes for anybody who's listening so that they can go see the videos as well. Yeah, thank you very much for your time. This has been really fun. I've always known that the Penland School existed. I had no idea that there was any of this stuff in the Burnsville area or around Penland, and it just makes me want to go there even more.
Well, please, guys, I'm telling you, if you'll come up here, I'll get you a room and the inn. I know the people that own it now.
One day.
Seriously.
Post-COVID.
Post-COVID, yes.
Maybe
please.
Like way post-COVID. I'm not good. I'm playing it very safe.
Okay.
15.
You've been listening to Arcane Carolinas. Thanks for joining us. If you liked it, give us a rating, leave a comment. If you didn't like it, send us an email and tell us why. If you're not wrong, we'll try to fix it.
And if you're interested in award-winning speculative fiction, including science fiction, urban fantasy, and horror, find me, Michael G. Williams, at www.michaelgwilliamsbooks.com and check out Falstaff Books at falstaffbooks.com.
If you'd like to pick up some Arcane Carolinas merch, look at behind-the-scenes info, pictures, videos, stuff like that, all the things that get cut, check out arcanecarolinas.com, where you can get access to our Patreon, our Facebook, our Twitter, our Instagram, all that in one place, including the merch store. Buy a shirt.
Clothe your body.
Drape your body in our wares.
Be our living billboards.